So tensions between America and Iran have been heating up. And lately I've seen some yikes hot takes by mainstream media, and my fellow journalists haven't had the best opinions either. So I thought I'd weigh in a little bit, maybe offer my own perspective, and hopefully at the end of this video you will have walked away learning something new. I don't offer any solutions, but maybe a unique perspective. It's funny, I studied history for 4 years in college, and I left with remarkably almost no marketable skills except for maybe a thoughtful perspective on the world. The main thing I want to talk about is the recent event where Iran shot down a U.S. drone in international waters. And I don't find this justification for an American retaliation. And I'll tell you why. Particularly not a justification for an American war with Iran, because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. In 1988, a commercial airline flying from Tehran to somewhere in the Emirates was shot down by a surface-to-air missile, by a U.S. warship of all ships. That's right, the U.S. sent a missile through the air and shot down a commercial plane carrying 290 civilian passengers, blew it up in midair. Killed something like 50 kids who were traveling on board that plane too. And America never apologized for that. Yes, they eventually sent some money, paid off some of the Iranian families that they had killed, but no formal apology was ever issued. And there's that phrase that rears its head every political election, the kind of, "I will never apologize for America." I think it was first said by George Bush Sr. "I'll never have a reason to apologize for America," or "I never will apologize for America no matter the reason." Mitt Romney says it. People get on the podium and they say there's never a reason to apologize for America. Well, I can think of a reason for apologizing for America. When we accidentally shoot down a civilian airline carrying 290 passengers and killing everybody aboard with a missile, I think that's worth apologizing for. But maybe that's just me. The other half I want to talk about is something called the Millennium Challenge that took place in 2002, or MCO2 for short. It was one of the largest war games the United States ever conducted. It was divided into two teams, a red team and a blue team. The blue team were the Americans. The red team were a Middle Eastern country. It was never defined or let known, but Iraq or Iran was the assumed Middle Eastern country. And during these war games that happened over the summer of 2002, it was to showcase the Americans' new technological and logistical power. So they lined up. And within a few short days, the red team, the Middle Eastern country, had actually sank 16 American warships, including an aircraft carrier and 10 battleships. In fact, the general, who was leading the Middle Eastern country, General Van Riper, was so effective in leading an asymmetrical warfare against the United States that the war games were actually paused. They stopped them 3 days in because the Americans were losing so bad. And once they paused them, they decided to relaunch them and reset them. But this time when they reset them, they had a script. And the red team, the Middle Eastern team, and the American team were to follow a script. And the red team were to turn on certain radar satellites that were going to be bombed and to launch certain ships from various ports that were going to get blown up. And the script played out in such a fashion that blue team was going to inevitably win. The Americans, that is. And in fact, General Van Riper, who was the general for the red team, resigned midway through that second reset. He said, "This script is so ridiculous. My hands are so tied by the script, this isn't a realistic war game at all." And him and some other fellow observers at the time said, in reality, this script in these war games really seemed to, its only purpose is to reinforce the ideal we have of American military superiority. Just another cultural drumbeat to the power of the United States. But in reality, before they did the reset, some heavy losses were inflicted to the American side. They estimated something like 20,000 military personnel would have been lost if this was a real war within the first 2 days on the American side. On top of that, Iran is not like the other Middle Eastern countries. It stands alone a little bit in its uniqueness and its idiosyncratic. One, because it's not like the rest of the countries, the Middle Eastern countries that were carved up and formed in the post-colonial era after the European empires fell apart. Iran, or Persia, has been around and existed for centuries, millennia, the Parthians. Their identity, the identity of an average Iranian, is much stronger as a nation state than I think an Iraqi or a Pakistani or somebody from Saudi Arabia is, as those were all countries that were formed and made up after decolonization, whereas Iran as an entity has existed for far longer. And the idea that Iran were to fracture into segregationist factions of various religious ideologies like Iraq did after the invasion, or Saudi Arabia would if the Al Saud family collapsed, I don't find compelling. They have a much longer, deeper history and identity culture than just religion. So I don't find the idea that America could quickly invade and Iran would suddenly capitulate in the civil war. That, and Iran is also a highly mountainous territory. It would be very, very hard to hold a country like Iran, unlike, say, Saudi Arabia, that's mainly desert. Now, that's not to say I don't think the United States would eventually win. In any protracted war, the United States would win. America's economic hegemony is unparalleled in the world. It's an economic powerhouse and could sustain basically any protracted war. It has enough natural resources to last 100 years. I think the Secretary of War said during World War II that, if we were to be totally isolated and be cut off from all our trading routes, and we just had to fight a war with Japan, we could survive for the next 100 years alone on our natural resources. Any minerals, oils we needed, we could do it. So a protracted war, the United States would win, but that's not the point, is it? The point is if any of this is worth it at all. And these are just things I think about. I'm curious to see what you think. Hopefully you learned something new. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and click around for another video here, maybe right in front of my face. I don't know where I'll put it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye.